that's very good.
Okay, well, Sean's put his props, or should I say costume on, and the installation has been activated from the point of view of electricity. There's a flashing recording sign, and is it possible, well, I should probably find out what you sound like with a gas mask on, if it's a gas mask.
It just simply sounds like that. I suppose to some it may sound a bit intimidating, but I guess it just sounds like my mouth in a can, as it were.
Yeah, can you breathe all right in there?
Absolutely, that's the design, I suppose.
Oh, right. So what kind of gas mask? Or
it's the Finnish World War II gas mask. They used it, I believe, from 1941, they said, till 1977, I think. That's when I bought it. They're amazing how cheap they are, actually. I'm surprised. You could buy any gas mask just about for under £10, nearly, which is surprising, I think, almost alarming.
It's reassuring to know if you feel you're in need of one sometime in the future.
Yeah, I know. I always sort of thought, like, I don't know why we need defense, in a way, in a lot of regards, and here the cheapest things are defense mechanisms.
I'll just draw back so that in terms of vision we can get a bigger idea of I suppose the visual part of the installation. Sean, I was wondering if I could ask you a little bit about the concept behind initially what was a radio piece that you did for your third year course in radio, which you got a first for, highest.
There's quite a bit of degree of thinking that went into it. I originally started the idea wanting to do just a horror, like a horror drama, but I wanted to do something different, so I thought I would do in the vein of Blair Witch, in a way. I haven't heard of a radio program that does it, tries to do it like it's a realistic take on something. And I was trying to think then a theme for something. I at the time I was into zombie movies and so on, the zombie sort of thing. I've always been a huge fan of horror anyway. And it just one thing led into another, and it just, when I get into something, I get really into something and I need to know. And I just put two and two together. I'm from South Africa myself, and I wanted to sort of, well, what instances in warfare with chemicals and so on is there with South African, the military anyway. And I remember stories from my brother. He was in the border war, and he would tell us, he gave me the entire idea for the entire thing in a way, because he was
this is during the apartheid period.
That's correct, yes. And he worked in communications in the military, so he would fix all the radio systems and so on and so forth. And he always told us these stories where it's like he would be given a job, a mission, and his operator or his captain or something would just basically blindfold him. They put him on the back of a jeep, and he wouldn't know where he's going. But all he can hear is, what they would do is they torture some poor Angolan person. They tie him to the front of the jeep, and they drive through thorn bushes. That's just their kicks along the way. And by that time, obviously, the person gets that he's dead. And when he would arrive there, he does obviously see just underneath the eyes with the blindfold. And he said all he could remember is hearing screams in the bunkers of people still being tortured, and he would be wading through blood to get to, say, their communication device that they needed fixing and stuff like that. And I mean, when I just thought of stuff like that, it's just like, well, these are actual genuine horror stories, and I wanted to sort of do something that does justice to like a real situation of horror, rather than create a quick fix of horror, something that makes you go, jump and so on. I wanted something, this is disturbing actually, this really happened, and all this sort of stuff. So
it's something deeply political, socio-psychological.
Absolutely, yeah.
And in relation to the sound medium, you're looking at sound as torture, perhaps, maybe? I don't know.
In a way, because when it comes to sound, how sound inspired me, rather, is maybe because it's dyslexic. I'm dyslexic, and I always kind of see things left of center. And I'm a huge fan of doom music and noise. And I like the idea of exploring emotions that don't go up, in a way. They just keep going down and down and down and down. And there's no happy ending. So I thought, I'm going to use this. So I actually approached this kind of like the construction of a doom or a noise song. I wanted to have really harsh sounds. I wanted to have really lo-fi sounds. I wanted it to... The narration in a lot of parts is not important for me. What's important is just how it sounds, essentially. So there's that section with the woman where she's giving like a news report kind of thing. She's a student. She's obviously not doing it right. It's not how you would do a news report or anything like that. And then the moment later she's trapped and you can't hear what she says, but I wanted it that way because if somebody had recorded it on a tape recorder, no one's going to be checking volumes and all that sort of stuff and so on. It had to be done, you know, just like there and just like as a record, and I wanted those sort of things put in there.
Sound actually can be very creative and aesthetic in its dyslexic, I suppose, context or environment. Was that something you were thinking about?
It was in a way, because again, I didn't want something that everyone else does. I mean, not that I'm trying to say that everyone else does something else like that would suit a certain way, but I wanted to do something that's definitely going to be that shows my stamp on it. I wanted to do like, this is my piece, this is what I can say about something, and what I know is going down those lines. It's like, I suppose I'm not a really happy person in a lot of ways. I mean, now it's fine, you know, and so on, but generally I'm not really happy with the way things are, and I wanted
in the world.
Yeah, I wanted to really like express that. Essentially, it's just my personal stamp on the piece of art.
Well, I mean, I think you're entitled to make a claim for originality, and we all think, and many of the people who visited your installation have found it thought-provoking, enormously creative, and original. It's not only in the original sound concept through the 15-minute radio piece, which had a tremendously strong positive reaction from the internal markers and the external examiner. But you've now, I suppose, introduced it into a different and new creative dimension with the installation. Yeah.
I remember halfway through when I was sort of battling with the themes and the ideas and how to mix it all in. I think that is part of my dyslexia. It's like I come up with a million ideas and I try and fit them all in. And I remember halfway through I just said, you know what? I'm not going to do this the way it would suit someone else. I'm going to do this exactly how I want it to sound. If that gets me a 0, if that gets me 20%, it became not a point anymore. It's just I need to do this the way I want to do it.
The realism in the piece is actually quite shocking, isn't it? I mean, I
need it to be.
Yeah, it's harsh. I was to bring in Neil at this point because Neil is also one of the hearers and appreciators of the piece. It's disturbing. It's a disturbing piece, isn't it?
Well, what I was going to add to everything that Sean said is that as the tutors and technicians here at the university, one of the most ambitious things that Sean attempted at the beginning was to actually have all the actors unscripted. It was all going to be completely spontaneous, and it's not that we ever want to interfere with anybody's work or anybody's ideas, but we just felt it was slightly over-ambitious, and that some of it needed to be scripted in order for the piece to work, in order for it not to take far too long to complete. And I hope that our advice actually worked in that way, because I think in the way that you've been describing your thoughts and the way that you've wanted the piece to work, it's actually that difficult for anybody else to understand that I think you may have found that the spontaneity just wouldn't have worked. And so what you actually managed to produce worked very nicely indeed.
Can I ask about the actors? They sounded as though they were professional actors. Who were they? Did you mind me asking?
The narrator was a man called Anthony Gabriel. He was a professional actor. He's doing quite well now. He's shooting all sorts of things around Wales and Romania and so on and so forth. So I haven't actually been able to give him a copy, but at some stage I will, I'm sure. He was the only one that was a professional actor. The other guys were, because I needed an accent.
Yes.
And I needed the South African accent well. And I went through a list of actors, and not really anyone could pull it off. And as much as they said they were trying, it's just like, no, And at that point, I was at that stage. It was like, I need to do this the way I want to do it.
Yeah. You're aspiring to realism and
right.
authenticity.
And exactly why also Anthony's part, he needed to be British. Because if he was a British guy talking about something, it's more like a report. That's how I wanted it. I originally planned on being like a guerrilla recording, leaving tapes around and just let people find it. But the other guys were basically just my friends from South Africa, and they're older than me.
Interesting.
And they also have very similar sort of experiences with people around them going into the border war and stories and so on. It's
cultural, emotional, political baggage, and baggage is almost a trivializing word. This is fundamental. This works through people's psyches through the generations.
It's one of those stories, I think, that especially for South Africans, especially for white South Africans maybe, that has been just brushed underneath the carpet, because no one wants to talk about it. I mean, in school we don't learn about our own wars. The only war we learn about is the Boer War, and then you look through history and it's like, oh, there's World War I, II, and so on, but then what happened to this? And this is the border wars. It's like everyone sort of kept it on as hush hush. And then when I started watching I found information on the net that's really shocking about like how they manufactured ecstasy by 10,000 tons to sort of try and control people with aerial ecstasy, and how they created another organism that's as small as, I don't know, they said something like a milligram, and it can kill millions of people if it's administered to the water. And it's,
chemical and biological warfare.
And I mean, I'm growing up in this country, and I never knew that we were up to like really devastating things. I mean, I knew at some stage, because when I grew up, I was just sort of, I'm a kid, sort of thing. I remember when there were certain political situations where people were assassinated, black politicians and so on. And at school, my mom would always say, just try and stay away from certain people today. I didn't understand what she meant. Only later on in life did I understand what that actually was. It was like, oh, so there's a grudge. I didn't know there was a grudge. I didn't know anything about this at all. And, it all coming back makes it quite shocking for me.
So, in a way, could I suggest that your sound work here is exploring the psychological dimension of this war?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's no way you could possibly just show how horrible it is. If you watch the tapes on YouTube, there's a whole list of border war tapes which celebrate it. They're like, it's like, oh no, the communists came here and South Africa tried to quell them and so on. It's absolutely not the truth at all. I mean, it was a harsh, horrible war and so on. I mean, like, I know personal accounts, my friends' fathers, my brothers were all involved in like killing of people in a way, inadvertently. They maybe not have done it themselves, but people around them were that like crazy that they just did stuff like they didn't think of human life in a way. And I needed all right, this is something that's very important over here.
Okay, could I ask you to take us through the thinking behind the design and the nature of the installation?
You're going to have to thank Neil for just about the entire sort of design of everything. I know I wanted this beforehand, but
this is a flashing recording
sign.
What's the thinking behind that?
Again, it was just to give it that authentic sort of radio kind of feel, and as well because I knew everyone else was stepping up the game with the media degree show. I thought we needed something that's going to be, real, like eye-catching. I didn't ask Neil for it. He just came up with it, and it was like, oh, that's exactly what I was thinking of in the first place. I just didn't think it was possible.
So you don't invite people into this can I call it a chamber?
You can call it the doom chamber if you want.
Shall I come in now?
Sure.
Jolly good. Here we go.
And
it feels somewhat doom-laden. It's got an atmosphere, hasn't it?
The moment Neil showed me the room, I immediately loved it because it was claustrophobic, had no windows. It's exactly how I imagined it should be. And I always knew I wanted the old South African flag there. I wanted to desecrate it in some way. And I thought it being in keeping with radio, I thought eyes to see, ears to hear. And by highlighting ears to hear, it made it seem more important that people listen, and instead of trying to find an easy way out and look for something that's a cheap thrill. This really makes you, I thought, thinking. I wanted people to think about it anyway. And the old stuff over here, which is all stuff that Neil found, which is tremendously amazing. I mean, I had no idea that all this stuff would be here, and it's great in keeping with the theme in that it's an old war, and it's the 70s, but it's not too old, but it's vintage, as it were, which is kind of a fashion these days.
So you've selected 70s equipment, 70s props.
Older.
I've dug out a selection of, shall we say, elderly equipment, the sort of equipment that may have been around in the time that Sean has set his piece. In fact, if the light is good enough and you just follow me
yes,
here,
I'll move around.
You can see a wonderful Coles 4038 microphone. These are still, or certainly were, in use daily at the BBC World Service. Fantastic microphones with a figure of 8 pattern. You can sit 2 people either side and both can read. In the corner, just underneath the flag over there, we have some cartridge machines and quite an elderly loudspeaker. Unfortunately, the light is not very good for the camera in here.
But that's deliberate, though, isn't it?
Part of the design of the room was for it to be dark.
We're trying to reproduce the experience of visitors to the installation.
Absolutely.